freedom of choice. Most of us want it. Most of us want a little bit more of it. And a lot of us build up a degree of financial independence so we can take control and have more choice in the most finite element of our lives. And I'd suggest that's time. But what if I told you having too much choice is as stressful as not having enough? In Barry Schwartz's brilliant book, The Paradox of Choice, he talks about why too much choice can result in a lack of action. Analysis paralysis sets in, and then we don't move forward in our lives. And when we think about retirement or the next chapter of our lives, it's often a period of our lives where we are giving up normal routines so we can do anything we want. The challenge we've got is if we can do anything and we're overwhelmed by too much choice, we often end up doing nothing. So in this video, I want to talk about the paradox of choice. I want to talk about the practical actions you can take if you're planning for retirement or what happens next in your life to avoid that paradox and make choices that are positive for you. And I'm also going to share what the psychologist and the philosophers can teach us about choice with one aim in mind: to prepare you better for what happens next in your life. Welcome to What Happens Next. Often when we're preparing for the next chapter of our lives, we move from a period of time where we know what's going on day to day, week to week and month to month, to a period where often it's a pretty blank canvas. Often we're moving from routines, often established over decades, to the opportunity to do whatever we want, whenever we want. And that's a good thing, right? Well, and often it is. However, Barry Schwartz argues in his brilliant books, and I agree with Barry on this one, that having a near unlimited choice with an abundance of options often leads to psychological discomfort and anxiety and regret. It can even lead to something called decision or analysis paralysis, where we waste loads of time making perfect decisions when actually there's not a perfect choice. So, what do we do when we're thinking about how to spend our valuable time, but we've got a completely blank canvas? And I'm going to suggest a number of things we should consider, including a bunch of practical actions and insights from both psychology and philosophy to support you thinking. And my first practical action comes from Barry Schwartz's book directly. That's about being a satisfier, not a maximizer. You see, a satisfizer is satisfied with good enough. A maximizer, on the other hand, seeks the absolute best way to expend time, effort and energy working out what's best in that particular circumstances. Satisfiers do something different. They make quicker decisions, feel less stress and enjoy whatever they're going to do because of this great satisfaction. The key lesson here, if you're finding yourself either preparing for or in the early days of retirement and you're thinking about how to make decisions, think about how you make them with perfection in mind, which might not be ideal, or with good enough in mind that at least then moves you forward. I get it. It's important to spend some time to make important decisions. However, an important question to ask yourself, I believe, is does the effort, the time and the energy you make in making a choice worth it? You might find that simply deciding that going for good enough as opposed to waiting until you've made the perfect choice, when in reality that often never existed, might be a better way to navigate the next stage of your life. I think both Eastern and Western philosophies share an interesting insight into how we make decisions. Ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus used to talk about the fact there is nothing permanent except change. And the Buddhists used to talk about this concept of impermanence. The reality is that most decisions we make in life, most, are reversible. For most decisions we can back up, we can change direction. And most decisions aren't as fixed as we believe because of the impermanence of life and the fact that change constantly happens around us. Being aware of this, I believe it allows us to make quicker, imperfect decisions that move us forward. And that applies just as much in our lives to when we're thinking about the next chapter. Because making more imperfect decisions more quickly allows us to do one thing better: move forward instead of staying stuck. My second practical tip is to make initial decisions in retirement incremental and low cost. I often find myself having conversations with clients in the early days of their retirement about big purchases. Some people want to buy a holiday home. Some people want to buy a brand new car. Some people want to buy a boat. And all those things are absolutely fine to do. But I always suggest that it might be worth thinking about how you test drive those new experiences before you actually make a big purchase. To give you an example, if you want to spend more time in the sun, instead of immediately buying a house in Spain, travel to some places to decide where you want to hang your hat. If you want to go on a camper van adventure, instead of buying a new camper van, do what we're doing actually this year, Cassie, I and Sophie, and lease a camper van so that you can really understand whether the experience is going to be permanently for you for every holiday. If you want to spend more time in the water, instead of buying a boat, join a yacht club. Now, all of these decisions might be right for you in your financial plan. However, my experience tells me that test driving some of these experiences, join the yacht club to experience what it's like on a boat before you buy, renting a camper van and going on a shorter adventure before you invest in a longer one, and instead of buying a holiday home, invest in a few travel experiences so you really understand what it's like to live in different places, might be a lower cost experiment that allows you to test and measure what you truly want to spend your money on. Small experimental lower cost steps allows you to do one thing. It allows you to test, measure and include numerous things as part of your plan for your what happens next without a large financial or time commitment. So here's the question. What experimental, relatively low-cost step can you take to try something you'd love to do in the next chapter of your life? There's a brilliant book, one I talk about all the time on What Happens Next, called Design Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And it talks about this concept in a lot more detail. I'd recommend that you pick it up, and we'll make sure we put a link in the comments. One small experimental thing you can do for free right now to support your journey into retirement or whatever happens next in your life is to sign up for the waiting list for the What Happens Next book. The book's coming out early in 2026, and you can sign up for the waiting list simply by clicking the link in the comments, or if you're watching this on your telly and you've got your phone, click the QR code with your phone. There should be a link that comes up and it will take you straight to that page. Because what I'm aiming to do is share everything we've learned through the journey of interviewing loads of great people on What Happens Next, and the research we've done and the videos we've produced in one place to help you do one thing. Ensure your retirement or whatever happens next in your life is the best it can be. My third practical tip is to build habits and commitments into your routine, but keep enough space for spontaneity. One thing I've seen my clients do well and not so well early in retirement is build habits into their lives. It might be going to the gym every morning. It might be walking the dog. It might be joining a bunch of clubs and committing to attend those clubs every week, every fortnight, every month. It might be to commit to be charity trustees. We know as humans, routines and habits are important to keep and maintain in our lives. However, there's one word of caution here. Don't fill your life with habits and commitments too much. The reality is leaving space for a bit of spontaneity is important too. In the brilliant book Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about positive habits and the way they accumulate over time. The challenge we often face is that when we've got a blank canvas in early retirement, we can slip into habits which might not serve us. So being intentional about what we do and thinking about the positive habits we want to build into our lives is something we want to consider. Aristotle, the ancient philosopher, loved a habit. He used to describe them as the foundations of moral character. And the Eastern ancient philosophers talked about habits which foster harmony, balance and health, particularly ones which anchor us in the present. And that might include walking the dog in nature or meditating. A modern day philosopher I love, Alan de Botton, talks about simple, regular rituals, including journaling, reading and walking, as tools for emotional balance. But again, encourages us to leave some space for spontaneity in our lives too. I'd recommend, if you're thinking about a lot of this stuff, to check out Alan de Botton's brilliant YouTube channel, School of Life, which provides amazingly interesting insights, particularly if you're thinking about the next chapter of your life. My fourth practical tip is to make sure you include activities which are social and purposeful. We talk a lot on What Happens Next about two areas of well-being which are often neglected when we overly focus on work and money. Now, you might be one of the people who are really decent at getting the right balance for you. However, I often see those with an intense focus on work and money not spending enough time focusing on their social and community well-being. The good news is that retirement, or whatever happens next in your life, is a good opportunity to have a reset. It allows us to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. It allows us to think about the contribution we want to make to others and the positive impact we want to make in the world. And it allows us to think about our social and community well-being in a lot more depth. Modern research completely backs up the importance of social relationships. The amazing Bob Waldinger, drawing on the 85-year research of the Harvard Study of Adult Development, highlights one thing above all others in his brilliant book, The Good Life. He insists in the book that strong relationships, both in quality and depth, are the most reliable predictor of health, happiness and longevity. So investing in our social and community well-being is really important for us. Confucius used to talk about the fact that being part of a community was important to, in his words, a harmonious life. And Aristotle talked about the fact that humans are social animals and flourishing isn't a social game. And you need to do it within a community. Modern positive psychology points to this too. And the grandfather of modern psychology, Martin Seligman, brilliantly pointed out that relationships as a core pillar of well-being boosts our happiness and well-being and reduces stress way more than increases in wealth and status. So when we're thinking about avoiding the paradox of choice, here's the things you need to focus on. Take good enough, not perfect decisions. Make those decisions low cost and experimental if possible. Make sure your decisions build some structure in your life, but not too much to allow you some flexibility and spontaneity. And ensure that your decisions are focused on both building and developing social relationships and what you can do to support others. So now you've got some practical tools to avoid analysis paralysis. Here's a simple choice, see what I did there, for the next video you might want to watch. In this video, I talk about why living a more stoic retirement might be a good thing for all of us. And in this video, I talk about what we can learn from the Eastern philosophies, particularly the Taoists, about a retirement well lived. Hopefully you enjoy the next video you watch. Have a lovely day and we'll see you on the channel soon.